Hey, friends! Barkey J. Dog here, back with another movie review. George Pal, the visionary producer who brought us Destination Moon, War of the Worlds, and The Time Machine. He made a lot of stuff, and like Rankin Bass, not all of it was a home run. This time I have one of his lesser-known films for you. One that seems to fly under the radar compared to those other movies which he made his name with. That's right, we're talking about Conquest of Space from 1955. Our story goes like this. It's the future, and everything seems great. But resources and new lands are needed so mankind can grow. Hard-assed space hero Colonel Merritt is the man who built the wheel, a space station in orbit high above the Earth. He's tasked with a new mission, building a ginormous spaceship meant to travel to the moon, which mankind hasn't done yet. But wait! It turns out that the designers and powers that be actually are planning for a different mission, a trip to Mars, and they want Merritt to command the flight. But there's a problem with that. See, it's established early on that for some people, living in space is not so good. They go a bit loopy, and the low gravity can lead to neurological and physical impairment, making them dangerous to be around since they flub stuff. They have to be sent back to Earth to recover and have to give up working in space. A common sense rule Merritt has put in place to protect the lives of the space personnel. Only now, Merritt is showing signs of having this space sickness himself, which he hides and thereby breaks his own rules. Rules for thee, but not for me. Huh, Colonel Merritt. Now, Merritt's son, not Leslie Nielsen, is his second in command, and he's kind of fed up with life in space. He wants to get reassigned back to Earth on account of having a new wife waiting for him, and he's a little keyed up after being in space for months on end, if you know what I mean. However, when the new objective for the flight is revealed, he agrees to go on the mission. There's a team of crack astronauts and some alternates being trained for this mission, and we see how they have to acclimate to special food made out of pills. Shades of the Jetsons, am I right? Anyway, aside from not Leslie Nielsen, they have this dopey guy from Brooklyn, a doctor, a scientist, and an old-timey sergeant who served with the colonel since forever. They launch to Mars, and almost right away things start to go wrong as they tangle with an asteroid, micrometeorites, lose contact with the Earth, and when they try to land, it doesn't go smoothly. All along the way, the colonel is getting loopier and loopier, crazed with religion, and basically goes all around bonkers, endangering the crew and the mission. Can our heroes survive the journey to the Red Planet? Can they find water and the other resources they need once they get there? And hey, look, it's Rosemary Clooney. I'll tell you right up front, the Twitter kids won't like this one. No, for one thing, there's a sexy chick who cameos here who is actually sexy. And she's also a stereotypical dumb blonde. Plus, they crib some footage from Here Come the Girls, where the aforementioned Rosemary Clooney is in an Arabian-themed dance number, singing about how she wants a man. There's also a lot of talk about God and man's place in the universe. Plus, in spite of having some action throughout, it's a bit of a slow burn. Twitter kids, or I guess what, BlueSky kids now? Anyway, they won't be able to handle any of that stuff. This one doesn't seem to have the same cachet as George Pal's other pictures, which is surprising considering the movie is pretty boldly envisioned. I mean, sure, nowadays we know what the surface of Mars is like, and it's nothing like we see in this picture. And about a third of the way through, the sergeant goes and becomes at odds with not Leslie Nielsen, which seems a bit unreasonable to me, since he knows the colonel is going off his rocker. So that tension is kind of ginned up. But other than that, there's a lot to like here. The problems the crew has to face, including downtime while waiting for a launch window, I really liked all of that. Legendary space artist Chesley Bonesell did some artwork for this one as well, as he did for several George Pal films. In our cast, not Leslie Nielsen was played by Eric Fleming. Interesting guy. He was in a serious accident during his time with the Seabees in World War II, damaging his face. After a lot of reconstructive surgery, he learned acting and played in several name-brand productions on Broadway. Then, did a bunch of live TV. Conquest of Space was his first starring role in a film. Then he was in Queen of Outer Space, which I've reviewed elsewhere on the channel. He went on to star in the TV series Rawhide. Sadly, he drowned during a TV shoot for a project in Peru, and he was only 41. Ugh. Walter Brooke plays his dad, the colonel, the man who built the wheel. He was in tons of things, such as The Graduate, Tora Tora Tora, Lawman with Burt Lancaster, Executive Action, another Lancaster film. He did a lot of one-off appearances on TV, too. He played the president in Buck Rogers in the 25th Century, and he was in a failed Irwin Allen pilot called Time Travelers, where some scientists have to travel in time back to the Chicago fire so they can find a cure to a deadly disease threatening the world in the present day. If you want to see that, I'm pretty sure it was an extra on the Time Tunnel box set. He really is interesting in Conquest of Space, as you see him slowly falling apart and going crackers. A little reminiscent of William Wyndham's turn as Commodore Decker on Star Trek. Ross Martin plays the medico on the flight. You know him from the Wild Wild West, among many other things. Conquest of Space was also his film debut. Mickey Shaughnessy, a very familiar face, is the Colonel's longtime sergeant with the Irish accent. He was in a lot of stuff over his long career, including Jailhouse Rock and From Here to Eternity. Phil Foster plays the dumbass crewman from Brooklyn. In fact, Foster starred in a series of shorts where his character, named Brooklyn, visits other cities around the country, making observations from a Brooklyn-based perspective. His character is kind of annoying, but he serves two purposes here. The first is comic relief, I guess. The other is to act as a stand-in for the audience. See, there was usually a character like this in science fiction offerings. Dr. McCoy on Star Trek comes to mind, or Doctor Who's many companions. One of the character's functions is to ask the obvious questions, so another character can explain the science, or why they can't just do this or that to solve the problem. This helps the audience better understand the situation and why they can't just fire the phasers or whatever. Unfortunately, unlike Dr. McCoy, it makes this guy come off as kind of a dumbass when it comes to the how space stuff works type of questions. Even though he works, trains, and lives in space, he doesn't seem to know how anything works. You may know him best from his final and long-running role as Frank DeFazio on Laverne and Shirley. Benson Fong plays crew member Immortal. Fong played supporting roles or extras in many films, his most notable role being Number 3 son, Tommy, in some of the Charlie Chan movies. He gives what is actually a moving speech as to why he wants to go on the mission. Again, the BlueSky kids won't have it. Despite the fact, interestingly, his character is the one who seems to hold everything together in this picture. Even when the others are panicking, he's not. He's the sensible one, the dependable one, the philosophical one, and the one who has the most curiosity and interest in science, and he's integral to the mission. A forward-looking, believable Asian character, a decade before Lieutenant Sulu manned the helm of the Starship Enterprise. We have Paul Drake here as well, William Hopper from Perry Mason, and there are other serviceable character actors who pop up too. Conquest of Space was directed by Byron Haskin. We've talked about him before. In his early days, he helped work on systems to bring sound to film, and later as a special effects chief at Warner Brothers. Why this guy isn't more of a known name brand is beyond me. He not only directed this film, but other classics as well, such as Robinson Crusoe on Mars, The Naked Jungle, Action in the North Atlantic, the aforementioned War of the Worlds, and another picture I reviewed not long ago, The Man-Eater of Qumran. He also directed Disney's classic version of Treasure Island, the one with the patron saint of Talk Like a Pirate Day, Robert Newton. That's the good one. George Pal's movies were known for great special effects, and this one is no exception. Some of the matte shots here are a little janky. The asteroid they encounter is ludicrous, but overall, the effects look great. The models were based on actual designs from Wernher von Braun and other rocketry experts. The set design is nice too. I love how the wheel interiors look. There's a lot of sensible design elements. And while some of this picture is very dated, and the engineering and scientific realities involved in a flight to Mars may not make sense now from a 21st century perspective, the movie asks some big questions, the kind movies never ask anymore. It takes a more philosophical tone rather than an action-adventure one, and admittedly, that makes this one a little slow. But it's still a lesser-known treat from George Pal, and well worth a watch. So I'm giving Conquest of Space 2.5 paws up. You take care of yourselves, and I'll see you in the next one.